You ever notice how people look at you when you talk? Not just hearing your words, but watching the way your eyes move, the way your body shifts, the way you react. They're not just listening. They're reading you. And the more open you are, the more data you're giving them. Every story you tell, every detail you volunteer, every little confession you spill out, it's all going into their mental file on you. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone who's listening to you is doing it with good intentions. Some people are listening to understand you. Others are listening to use you. And the worst part? Most of the time you don't even realize which one you're dealing with. You think you're bonding, you think you're building trust, but what's really happening is this. You're handing over the keys to your mind, your emotions, and your vulnerabilities. And once they know what makes you tick, what excites you, what scares you, what drives you, they can steer you in any direction they want. Now, let's be clear. Openness isn't bad. Connection requires it. Relationships need it. But blind openness, oversharing, giving your entire life story to people who haven't earned that trust. That's not connection. That's exposure. And exposure in the wrong hands is weakness. Because the more they know about you, the easier it is to predict you, to push your buttons, to manipulate your choices without you even realizing it. Think about it. How many times have you walked away from a conversation regretting what you revealed? How many times have you thought, why did I say that? They didn't need to know. And later, that very detail, that very story, somehow comes back to haunt you. It gets repeated, it gets twisted, it gets used. That's what happens when you're too open. You give away your power before you even realize you're doing it. So let me ask you, who's reading you right now? Who have you given too much of yourself to? And if you look back at your recent conversations, would you see connection or would you see confession? Because if you're not careful, you're teaching people exactly how to play you. Every single thing you say, every movement you make, every pause in your response is information. You may not realize it, but you are broadcasting data all the time. Most people assume communication is only about words, but in reality, words are the smallest piece of the puzzle. Tone, posture, eye movement, even the way your breathing changes, these are signals. And the more open you are, the more signals you send. People who know how to read them, whether consciously or instinctively, use them to form conclusions about you. Conclusions you may never even be aware of. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone asks you, are you comfortable with this project deadline? You say, yeah, I'm fine. But you say it while shifting your weight in the chair, breaking eye contact, and hesitating before you answer. Do you think they believed your words? Not a chance. What they picked up on was the hesitation, the shift, the discomfort. Without realizing it, you just gave them the truth, even while trying to hide it. That's how powerful nonverbal data is. It always leaks. And when you're too open, when you let your guard down too easily, you magnify that leakage tenfold. Now, here's the danger. Not everyone who's collecting this data is doing it innocently. Some people gather it with precision. They store it. They analyze it. They use it to predict your behavior. If they know you smile nervously when you're unsure, they'll push you into quick decisions. If they notice you light up when someone praises your work, they'll flatter you to get you to agree to something you don't actually want to do. If they learn that a certain subject makes you tense, they'll avoid it when they want something from you. Or they'll exploit it when they want to throw you off balance. This isn't paranoia. It's reality. Negotiators do it. Interrogators do it. Manipulators do it. Leaders do it. Even friends and family members do it. Often without realizing, and the more open you are, the more you talk, explain, confess, the easier you make their job. Because you're not just giving them a few crumbs of data, you're handing them the whole map. Think about the people you've worked with. There's always that one person who shares too much in meetings, rambling about their workload, their frustrations, their personal struggles. Do you know what's happening while they talk? Everyone else in the room is collecting. They're learning what pressures this person cracks under, what topics trigger them, what insecurities drive them. Later, when decisions are made, those little details come back into play. And the oversharer has no idea that they've just given away their position without anyone having to ask. Or picture a negotiation. Two people sit across from each other at the table. One is calm, composed, answers only what's asked. The other is overly open, justifying their decisions, revealing their budget, even admitting their fears about whether the deal will work. Who wins that negotiation? Always the one who keeps their data close. Because when the other side has too much information, they have leverage, and leverage is power. But this doesn't only happen in professional settings. It happens in relationships too. You meet someone new, and because you want to build trust, you start sharing your past heartbreaks, your biggest regrets, your deepest fears. At first it feels like bonding, but if that person doesn't have the right intentions, you've just given them a manual on how to get under your skin. And later, during a fight or disagreement, those very things you revealed will come flying back at you like weapons. They didn't have to dig for them. You handed them over. Every word, every gesture is data. The smile that lingers too long, the nervous laugh, the way you cross your arms when you're uncomfortable, the way your voice gets sharp when you're defensive. You may think you're being casual, but people are watching. They're logging it, and some are using it. So what do? You become intentional about your openness. You learn the discipline of measured communication. You understand that just because someone asks doesn't mean you have to answer. Just because silence feels uncomfortable doesn't mean you need to fill it. Just because you're tempted to explain yourself doesn't mean you should. The less unnecessary data you give, the harder it is for people to read and predict you. And this isn't about being cold or closed off. It's about balance. Share what builds connection, not what exposes you. Give information strategically, not impulsively. Let people earn the right to know you, instead of handing everything over up front. Because every time you speak, every time you move, you are either protecting your power or leaking it. If you think about the strongest, most commanding people you've ever met, what stands out? It's not that they said a lot, it's that they didn't. They spoke less, but every word carried weight. They revealed less, but what they did reveal mattered. They weren't easy to read, and because of that, they were respected. They had an aura of mystery that made people lean in. And here's the secret. Mystery is power. When you recognize that every word, every gesture is data, you stop living on autopilot. You stop giving people access to your inner world, just because they happen to be standing in front of you. Instead, you take back control. You decide what to show, what to hide, what to save for the people who have proven they deserve it. That's how you stop being an open book. That's how you protect yourself in a world where, like it or not, everyone is reading you. Vulnerability is a powerful thing. When used wisely, it creates connection, intimacy, and trust. It's how we build relationships and how we show others that we're human. But here's what most people don't understand. Vulnerability is also a double-edged sword. When you share the wrong pieces of yourself with the wrong people, that very openness can be turned against you. Vulnerability can be weaponized. And if you don't see it coming, it will cut you deeper than any blade. Think about this. Every time you open up about your fears, your failures, or your insecurities, you're giving someone a piece of your blueprint. You're saying, here's where I've been hurt. Here's where I'm weak. Here's where I can be manipulated. The people with good intentions will take that information and treat it with care. They'll use it to support you, to connect with you, to stand by you. But the people with hidden agendas, they'll store that information like ammunition. And the moment they need it, when they want leverage, when they want control, when they want to wound you, they'll pull it out and fire it right back at you. This is why so many people regret oversharing. They think they're being honest, transparent, real. But months later, in the heat of an argument or a negotiation, they hear their own words, twisted and thrown at them. A past mistake you admitted suddenly becomes the reason you're unreliable. A fear you confessed becomes the very button they press to keep you in line. A failure you revealed becomes the story they spread behind your back. That's what it looks like when vulnerability gets weaponized. It no longer belongs to you. It's in someone else's hands, and they're not afraid to use it. Let's take this to the workplace. Imagine you're having a tough time balancing deadlines, and you confide in a colleague, telling them you feel overwhelmed and unsure if you can keep up. At that moment, you think you're being relatable. You think they'll understand, But later, when a promotion opportunity comes up, that same colleague casually mentions to your boss, they've been really stressed. Maybe they can't handle more responsibility right now. Your vulnerability just cost you advancement, not because you weren't capable, but because the wrong person had access to your private struggle. Now let's flip it to personal relationships. You tell a partner about a deep insecurity, maybe about your looks, your family background, your financial situation. In the beginning, they comfort you, reassure you, but fast forward to a fight, and suddenly that very insecurity is their go-to weapon. No wonder you're so insecure about your weight. You're just like your family. You'll never change. You'll never be successful because you don't have what it takes. Do you see the shift? What once felt like safe vulnerability has been twisted into a knife. And because those words came from someone you trusted, they cut far deeper than if a stranger had said them. This is why discernment is everything. You cannot hand your vulnerability to everyone and expect them to protect it. Some people will, others won't. And it's not always obvious who falls into which category. That's why you have to slow down. Test people. See how they handle small details before giving them big ones. Pay attention to how they treat other people's secrets before you hand them yours. Vulnerability should be earned and not given away like free samples. Here's the thing. Being guarded doesn't mean you're cold or untrusting. It means you value yourself enough to protect your inner world. The strongest people aren't the ones who tell everyone everything. The strongest people are the ones who know exactly who has earned the right to hear their story and who hasn't. And let's be real. Sometimes people don't even mean to weaponize your vulnerability. Sometimes it's unconscious. They repeat what you said without realizing the impact. They joke about something you revealed, thinking it's harmless, but to you it stings. Or they use your words to justify their own decisions without realizing they've thrown you under the bus. Intentions don't always matter. The damage is the same. Once your vulnerability is out there, you no longer control how it's handled. That's why the discipline of restraint is so important. Ask yourself before you share. Does this person need to know this? Have they earned my trust? What could they do with this information if things went south between us? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, stay quiet. Protect your power. Vulnerability is like handing someone a loaded gun. You better make sure they're not the kind of person who will point it at you later. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying shut yourself off from the world. I'm not saying build walls so high no one can climb them. Connection requires vulnerability. Leadership requires it. Relationships thrive on it. But connection is built through selective, intentional vulnerability, not reckless spilling. You don't owe every person your deepest truths. You don't need to give strangers, colleagues, or acquaintances your entire history. You get to choose who sees you and how much they see. And when you learn this balance, you become powerful. You stop being easy to manipulate. You stop handing out ammunition. You stop letting people write your story with your own words. Instead, you reveal strategically, share wisely, and keep the most important parts of yourself safe until someone has proven beyond doubt they can handle them with care. Vulnerability is a gift, but in the wrong hands, it's a weapon. So before you open your mouth, before you bare your soul, ask yourself, am I giving this gift to someone who deserves it? Or am I arming someone who may one day turn it against me? That single question can save you from regret, betrayal, and manipulation. Protect your vulnerability because it's not weakness, it's power. And like all power, you must decide carefully who gets access to it. Control is power. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that power only comes from action, from speaking, from proving themselves. But often real power comes from restraint, from knowing when to hold back, when to stay silent, and when to let others wonder. You don't always need to spill everything you know, everything you feel, everything you've done. In fact, the more you spill, the less power you have. The key is to control the narrative, not hand it away. When you walk into any room, whether it's a business meeting, a social gathering, or even a date, understand this. People are creating stories about you. They're piecing together information, filling in blanks, and forming opinions. That's natural. But here's the mistake most people make. They rush to fill in all the blanks for others. They overshare. They justify. They explain themselves in detail. nobody asked for. They think they're clarifying, but what they're really doing is handing control of the narrative over to everyone else. Let's make this real. Imagine you show up late to a meeting. Instead of simply saying, "Apologies for being late. Let's get started." You launch into a 3-minute explanation about traffic, your alarm clock, the kids, the phone call that ran long. Do you know what you just did? You gave people more reasons to question your reliability. You added noise, and now the narrative about you is this: they're always overwhelmed, they can't manage their time. But if you had said less, owned it, and moved on, the narrative would have been, they're direct, they take responsibility, they're focused. Do you see the difference? The story others tell about you isn't based on what actually happened, it's based on how you chose to present it. Here's another example. You're in a job interview, and the interviewer asks you about a gap in your resume. One person panics and spills everything. "Well, I left my last job because my boss and I didn't get along. Then I tried freelancing, but that didn't work. And then I was unemployed for 6 months and it was really hard." By the time they finish, the interviewer isn't thinking about their skills, they're thinking about instability. Now compare that to the person who simply says, "During that time, I focused on developing new skills and preparing for the next step in my career." Clean, simple, controlled. Same situation, but two very different narratives. The danger of spilling is that you think you're clearing doubts, but you're actually feeding them. You think you're showing transparency, but you're giving people information they didn't earn and don't need. And once they have it, you can't take it back. People will twist it, repeat it, or use it to build a story that doesn't serve you. That's why restraint is power. That's why you must learn to control the narrative. But let's go deeper. Controlling the narrative doesn't mean lying or pretending. It means being intentional. It means deciding what you want people to walk away thinking about you and shaping your communication around that. It means revealing enough to connect, but not so much that you give away your leverage. It's not about being fake. It's about being strategic. This applies everywhere. In leadership, the most respected leaders aren't the ones constantly explaining themselves or spilling every detail. They're the ones who speak less, but when they do, people listen. They share the big picture, not the entire behind-the-scenes chaos. They understand that mystery creates weight. It makes people lean in. It keeps them wondering. And when people are wondering, they're paying attention. In personal relationships, this is just as true. Think about how attraction works. When you first meet someone, you don't fall for the person who dumps their entire life story on the table in the first 5 minutes. You're intrigued by the person who shares pieces enough to connect, but not enough to be fully known yet. They leave space for curiosity. They make you want to know more. That's not manipulation. It's pacing. It's respect for your own story. Because your story is valuable and not everyone deserves the whole thing right away. Now, some of you might be thinking, but if I don't share everything, won't people assume the worst? No. People assume based on what you do give them. If you're calm, confident, and precise, that's the story they'll believe. Silence doesn't make people doubt you. Nervous rambling does. Short, controlled responses don't make people suspicious. Oversharing does. The people who spill endlessly are often the ones who create the very mistrust they were trying to avoid. Controlling the narrative also protects you from manipulation. Because when people don't know everything about you, they can't use it against you. They can't press buttons they don't know exist. They can't predict you if you haven't laid out your entire thought process for them. That unpredictability, that mystery, is your shield. It keeps you one step ahead. Here's the truth in this world. People are always trying to read you, define you, put you in a box. And if you're not careful, you'll make their job easy by spilling all your details for free. Stop doing that. Make them work to know you. Make them earn your trust. Share selectively, strategically. Decide what story you want told about you and then live it, speak it, and guard it. Because here's the harsh reality. If you don't control the narrative, someone else will. And once they control it, they control how others see you. That's how reputations get damaged, how trust erodes, how power slips out of your hands. You must be the author of your own story. You must decide what pages people get to read and what chapters stay closed. So the next time you feel that urge to explain yourself, to over-justify, to spill your life onto the table, pause. Ask yourself, does this serve me or does this serve them? If it doesn't serve you, hold it back. Because control isn't about having the loudest voice in the room. Control is about having the discipline to speak only when it matters and to reveal only what strengthens your position. That's how you stop being read. That's how you protect your power. And that's how you make sure your story belongs to you and no one else. If there's one thing you need to understand about people, it's this. Just as they're reading you, you can read them too. Reading is a two-way street. Too often we forget this. We assume others have the upper hand, that they're the ones gathering information, studying our movements, interpreting our silences, and yes, they are, but you can do the exact same thing to them. The difference between being controlled and being in control is whether or not you learn to read back. Every human being leaks information, just like you unconsciously reveal your stress through a sigh, or your excitement through a spark in your eyes. Others do too. And when you learn to pay attention, you'll see patterns, cracks, and truths they don't even realize they're exposing. The question is, are you tuned in enough to catch them? Let's take body language. Someone says, I'm fine, but their arms are crossed, their jaw is tight, and they won't look you in the eye. Do you believe the words or do you believe the signals? Always believe the signals. The body doesn't lie. Or imagine you're pitching an idea at work. The person across the table nods politely, but their foot starts bouncing under the desk. They're restless. They're disengaged. They may not say it out loud, but they've already checked out. That's your cue to shift strategy. When you understand that reading is a two-way street, you stop feeling like prey and start acting like a hunter. You realize that while people are busy trying to interpret you, you have the ability to interpret them right back, and often more effectively, because most people are sloppy communicators. They reveal more than they intend to. They overshare. They show their tells. And if you're paying attention, you'll see the truth behind the facade. Here's where it gets powerful. Once you can read people, you can anticipate them. You can predict how they'll respond. You can sense when they're bluffing, when they're hiding something, when they're insecure. And when you can anticipate someone, you have the upper hand. They may think they're controlling the exchange, but you're already 3 steps ahead. Think about a negotiation. While the other side is trying to assess your weaknesses, you're watching them closely. You notice how they lean forward when you talk numbers, but lean back when you talk deadlines. That tells you what matters most to them. Or maybe you catch the flicker of relief in their face when you make a particular offer. Proof that they were more desperate than they wanted you to think. By reading them, you gain leverage. By paying attention, you get the truth they didn't intend to give. This applies just as much in personal life. You're in a conversation with someone you care about. They tell you everything's fine, but you notice their tone is clipped, their smile is forced, their energy feels distant. You don't take the words at face value. You read the cues. You recognize the disconnect, and because you see it, you can address it. You don't wait for them to explode weeks later. You don't get blindsided. You saw it in the moment. But here's the catch. Most people don't read because they're too busy talking. They're too busy spilling, explaining, trying to prove themselves, worried about how they're being perceived. Meanwhile, the sharpest person in the room is the one who says less, listens more, and observes everything. Reading people is less about what you say and more about what you notice. And the person who notices the most wins. So how do you sharpen this skill? You slow down. You watch more than you speak. You pay attention to the gaps, the silences, the hesitations, the little inconsistencies between words and actions. You ask fewer direct questions and instead let people fill the space with their own words, because the more someone talks, the more they reveal. And when they reveal, you collect. Another key is to look for patterns. One reaction in isolation doesn't tell you much. But if every time you mention a certain subject, someone tenses up, if every time responsibility comes up, they deflect, if every time you succeed they minimize it, that's a pattern. Patterns are truth, and once you spot them, you understand what drives a person, what threatens them, what motivates them. That's information you can use not to exploit, but to navigate with clarity. Reading is also about energy. You can feel when someone is nervous, when they're angry, when they're hiding something. Even if their words are polished, the energy betrays them. If you've ever walked into a room and immediately felt tension without anyone saying a word, that's your instinct, picking up on energy. Trust it. Most people ignore those signals because they're subtle. But the more you train yourself to notice them, the more obvious they become. Now let's be real, just because you can read people doesn't mean you should always act on it. Sometimes the power is in staying quiet, keeping the information for yourself. Because when someone believes they're reading you but doesn't realize you're reading them back, that's when you have the advantage. They reveal, you store. They expose, you observe. And when the time comes, you already know how to move. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the one talking the loudest. It's the one who sits quietly, watching, absorbing, collecting. They're not leaking data. They're gathering it. And when they finally speak, they do so with precision because they already know more than anyone else in the room. That's the level you want to reach. That's what it means to turn reading into a two-way street. So stop thinking of yourself as an open book. Stop worrying about being studied. Instead, flip the script. While they're reading you, read them harder. Pay attention to the things they don't say, the expressions they can't hide, the patterns they can't break. Information is power, and you have just as much ability to gather it as anyone else. Remember this, people may be studying you, but you're not powerless. You're not defenseless. You have eyes, ears, instincts, and awareness. Use them, because the one who sees the most controls the game. And once you master reading others while staying unread yourself, you'll never walk into a room feeling at a disadvantage again. You'll walk in knowing you hold the edge. There's something magnetic about mystery. Think about the people you're most drawn to. They aren't the ones who broadcast every detail of their lives, every thought, every emotion. They're the ones who reveal just enough to spark your curiosity, but never so much that you feel like you completely have them figured out. That is not an accident. That's power. Mystery creates intrigue, and intrigue creates influence. When people can't easily predict you, they have to respect you. They lean in. They wonder. They adjust their behavior around you. And that subtle shift gives you the upper hand. The problem is, most people are terrified of being misunderstood. They believe that if they don't explain everything, if they don't reveal themselves fully, others will get the wrong idea. But here's the truth. People will always make assumptions anyway. No matter how much you explain, no matter how much you spill, they'll still form their own conclusions. So why waste your energy trying to control every thought they have? Instead, use restraint. Leave room for mystery. Give them something to think about, not everything to consume. Mystery is not about deception. It's about discipline. It's about understanding that your story, your emotions, and your vulnerabilities are valuable, and not everyone has earned the right to access them. Too many people confuse openness with authenticity. They believe being real means showing everything, but authenticity is not about overexposure. It's about being true to yourself while also being intentional about what you share. And sometimes the most authentic, most confident thing you can do is keep parts of yourself private. Let's look at the leaders and influencers who command attention effortlessly. They're not the ones live streaming every moment of their personal lives. They're the ones who choose what to reveal carefully. They give you highlights, not the unfiltered chaos behind the scenes. And that selectiveness makes every word, every appearance, every action more impactful. When you don't know everything about someone, every little piece you do get feels more significant. That's the psychology of scarcity, and it works. Mystery also makes people cautious. When others can't read you, they don't know how to approach you, they hesitate, they tread lightly, and in that hesitation you gain time and control. Contrast that with the oversharer, who puts everything on the table. When someone has all your cards, they know how to play against you. But when you hold cards close to your chest, they're left guessing. And people respect what they can't easily predict. Think about relationships. How many times have you seen someone lose interest because everything was revealed too soon? Attraction isn't built on instant transparency. It's built on gradual discovery. It's built on a sense of there's more to this person than I can see right now. That applies not just romantically, but in friendships, business, and leadership too. People stick around when they feel like there's always more to uncover. And you create that by maintaining mystery. But here's where it gets deeper. Mystery isn't just about withholding information. It's about how you carry yourself. It's in the way you pause before you answer a question. The way you don't always give away your full emotions on your face. The way you let silence sit in the room without rushing to fill it. Silence, restraint, and composure are all part of mystery, and they make people pay closer attention. Because when you don't say much, every word matters more. Mystery also protects your peace. When you don't let everyone into your private world, you create a boundary that shields you from unnecessary noise. People can't gossip about details they don't know. They can't weaponize stories you never told. They can't use your insecurities against you if you never revealed them. That doesn't mean you don't connect with people. It means you connect wisely. You choose what parts of yourself to share and with whom. That's not coldness. It's self-respect. Some people think mystery makes you unapproachable, but the opposite is true. Mystery makes you magnetic. Think of the person who walks into a room and doesn't immediately need to announce who they are, what they do, or how important they want to be perceived as. Instead, they observe, they engage selectively. They leave people wondering. And because they're not easily figured out, others become more curious, more interested, more eager to understand them. Mystery pulls people in without you ever having to push. The most dangerous mistake you can make is thinking that spilling everything about yourself will make people like you more. Maybe it will for a moment, but over time it breeds predictability. Predictability can breed disrespect. When people feel like they've already read the book that is you, they lose the drive to keep turning the pages. But when you leave chapters closed, when you pace the reveal, you keep them hooked. Mystery also equals control and conflict. When you argue, the person who reveals less usually wins. If you stay calm, measured, and unshaken, you frustrate the person who's trying to get a rise out of you. They want your buttons, they want your emotional tells, but if you don't hand them over, they lose leverage. Your mystery disarms them, because nothing is more unnerving than someone who doesn't give away what they're thinking. At the end of the day, mystery isn't about hiding who you are. It's about valuing who you are. It's about recognizing that your energy, your truth, and your story are not for everyone. Some parts of you are sacred. Some parts should remain yours alone, or only shared with those who truly earn that trust. When you understand that, you stop bleeding information everywhere you go. You stop being an open book and start being a story people want to earn the right to read. So ask yourself, do people already have you figured out? Or are you someone they can't quite pin down? If everyone knows everything about you, if nothing about you surprises anyone anymore, then you've handed over too much. Start pulling it back. Start practicing restraint. Let curiosity work in your favor. Because the truth is, in a world full of people desperate to be seen and known, instantly, the one who masters mystery will always stand out. Mystery is power. Not because it hides you, but because it protects you. It makes you unpredictable, magnetic, and respected. And the less people know, the more they want to know. That's not a weakness. It's your greatest strength. Here's the truth you need to walk away with. In this world, everyone is watching, everyone is reading, everyone is collecting. Every word you say, every detail you share, every reaction you give, it's all data. And if you're not intentional, if you're not disciplined, you will hand over your power without even realizing it. But you are not powerless. You are not an open book, unless you choose to be. You can control your narrative. You can decide what people see, what they know, and how much access they get to you. You can read them just as much as they try to read you, and you can protect your peace, your story, and your strength by mastering one simple principle: mystery is power. So stop oversharing. Stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned the right to your truth. Stop handing out pieces of your life like they cost nothing. They cost everything. Your words, your emotions, your vulnerabilities, they are your currency. Spend them wisely, because once you give them away, you can't get them back. And from this moment forward, I want you to remember this. Connection doesn't mean exposure. Confidence doesn't mean oversharing. Authenticity doesn't mean bleeding your soul to anyone who asks. Real power is measured. Real strength is discipline. Real influence comes not from what you reveal, but from what you reserve. When you walk into a room, hold your cards close. Let people wonder. Let them lean in. Let them work to know you. Because the less predictable you are, the harder you are to control. And the harder you are to control, the more respect you command. So choose mystery. Choose discipline. Choose power. Because the moment you stop being so open, the moment you start guarding your story, is the moment you stop being read and start being in control of the game.